Hello, I'm Andy from Secret Identity Comics, and thank you for joining me again on the Secret Identity Comics YouTube channel. Lots to talk about. As always, we've got a question from our old friend, OrangeFoxJoker 1392, if that is your real name. What's the deal with the 1392, OrangeFoxJoker? I'm Andy Smith. My personal email address has basically got a telephone number behind it, because there's a few Andrew Smiths in the world. But your OrangeFoxJoker, I think you've got it nailed, mate. I don't think you need the 1392. Something to think about. Who asks, what's your take on graded comics? Ooh. First of all, thank you for the question. It's a great question. Thank you very much. This is a thorny one. This is a tricky one. Let's jump into it. What are my thoughts on graded comics? I got a lot of thoughts on graded comics. I saw this question come in a few days ago, and I thought it's a great idea, great topic. And so I thought, yeah, we're going to talk about that. And it is something which I want to address in more detail in a future video. And so in readiness to discuss it, I just asked a few people in the shop, a few regulars, sort of long-term comic fans, what their thoughts were, to see if I was similarly aligned. And also just, you know, sometimes when you've got lots of conflicting ideas in your mind, and just thrash it out, just talk it out, and you sort of clarify things a bit. I didn't. It felt like everyone was similarly minded to me in that inherently I don't particularly like graded comics. This is a personal thing. I'm going to talk about it from a personal angle and a professional angle. But for now, let me just say, personally, they're not for me. I don't own any graded comics. I have no intention of sending any of the comics I do own to be graded. I just personally don't connect with it. I respect it and I understand it, and I think there's a place for it. So, but I'm jumping around. I'm saying lots of words, but not actually saying anything. So let's get to it. I personally am not a fan of graded comics. I feel that the second you grade it and it gets encased in that plastic coffin of it stops being a comic book and it becomes a commodity. It becomes a thing. Now, you could argue that it's effectively a piece of art when you do that, because a piece of art, a painting, is one thing. It's a cover, basically, isn't it? It's a comics cover. A comics cover is that. And by putting it in that plastic case, you render it down into that, which is perfectly valid. But nonetheless, it's a comic, for me, is a tangible thing. They'll have a great cover, and then I can do this, and I can interact with it, which is its purpose. Other things get graded. For example, a baseball card. Baseball cards or sporting cards, or trading cards at all, Pokemon and anything. Also, there's a big business in grading them. And I feel much more lenient about that, because when you encase that two-sided thing in a transparent plastic case, it retains its functionality. It's still a two-sided thing. You can still interact with it as you should. I mean, yes, it's protected by plastic, but still, there it is. Look at both sides. Comics different. You've taken away the comic bookness of it and just rendered it into a comic cover or a piece of art. So I'm not a huge fan of it for me personally. However, and this is the bit where I really struggle to formulate my own opinion, if I were to come into possession of a very rare comic book, Detective Comics 27, Superman 1, anything like that, I'd be duty bound to get it graded and protected. Those things are so rare and so fragile and such a part of cultural history. They need to be recorded, logged, looked at, protected. It would be irresponsible not to. That, in a way, is no longer a comic book, or is no longer just a comic book. It's an actual piece of history. It's an artifact. You know, it belongs in a museum as a great man once said. So where's the cutoff point for that, though? You know, I'm talking very grandly about how I don't want to turn this piece of art into something else. And this one, which was released this month. And, oh, we must protect the one which was produced decades ago. Where's the cutoff point? 50s, 60s, 70s? I don't know. A particular key issue which was released much more recently, Hulk 181. I mean, it's not recent by any means, but if I had one of those come in, probably I should get it graded and protected for the same reasons. So I feel there's an element of the hypocrite in me here. And again, I think I'm not entirely clear on my thoughts. And for all my grand words, I do get comics coming in here all the time. I buy comics. And one of these days I'll find something which I think, oh, wow, I'm going to get that graded, even if it doesn't particularly fall into that category, because it was the first appearance of so and such. And by getting it graded, you know, I turn a £400 value, for example, into 1,000, for example. It'll be interesting to see when I face that situation what I actually do. And I'll talk about it on here, hopefully quite honestly. It's a really, 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 really tricky one. Sometimes I'm aware of, and I appreciate, people like to buy double copies of something. Maybe they'll buy the standard cover and the variant cover. And I believe sometimes that with the intention of having the variant cover graded. And good for you. I'd like to say right now, I'm not against people doing it. I personally, it's not for me. But some people like it, and I get that. In much the same way that whenever I've gone to a comic shop, I buy something I'd like to read, whereas some people come in and they are really looking for a particular type of cover, even more than the comic that's in it. You know, I've got a customer, semi-regular, should we say, who really likes Aliens. And so he doesn't necessarily want to read it, and maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but he wants the cover. So he loves the fact that I'm able to take him to the DHP, Dark Horse Presents, which was kind of like an anthology comic Dark Horse used to do. And they had the Aliens license, and Predator too. And so there would be short stories basically within there of an alien, and the alien would be on the cover. So that was an alien cover, which was off his radar. My point being, I don't have my point being, I suppose, that people do come to comics for different reasons. And if it's the collectability angle of it, which is as much a driver for them as the content, well, then so be it. Is that any different than a coin collector? Because they don't take the coin and go and spend them in the local spa, do they? No, they don't. They keep them. Almost for the sake of keeping them, for collecting them, cataloging them. A graded comic is no different to that. It's a really complicated issue. And for me, there's always this rub between the fact that a comic is for a purpose, for reading, and by grading it, you take away that purpose. But that's nonsense, isn't it? If people love the comics for whatever reason, so be it. I've got a couple of teachers that come in, and they'll sometimes get a couple of comics from me. And I know one person, he reads them. And I know they sometimes end up in his classroom for the kids to cut up, to make collages, art projects. That's destroying the comic. But who cares? Because it's for the kids to do an art project. They may be the comic artists of, several years' time. Good. Do that. Take them. Use them in any way where someone gets enjoyment out of them. That's great. So, don't do that with bloody Superman #1, which I suppose you could argue is another reason to preserve these things, to make sure Andy from Secret Identity Comics doesn't accidentally give Superman 1 to the teacher, who then takes it to his kids, who cut it up and make collages with it. Ooh. So I've really not got very far with this, have I? I think I've spoken a lot of words, but with very little conclusion. And as I always say, I'd love to know what people think of this. OrangeFoxJoker, I'd love to know your take on it. The fact you asked the question, presumably you have an opinion. Maybe you have some yourself. And I wonder, are they ones you bought graded? Are they ones you bought and then had graded? Are they of particular importance to you? Or are they just particularly key issues? So let's move on to the money side of it, the investor side of it, which I touched on before. And I think it's true, of course, when things are graded, it serves actually a great purpose for the trading side of things. If I've got a comic of particular interest and you are interested in buying it, we all know that a rub on the corner, a dink in the spine could greatly affect the price, the value, perceived value. So having an independent third party to send it to say, listen, what grade is this? And then we're both on the same page. It doesn't matter if I disagree about the condition of that staple with your condition of that staple, because the independent CGC would be the typical one, are going to take care of that. And they're going to lay down the law like a judge in court, and we're both going to have to just accept the result of that. And then it's encased in plastic. It certainly has that purpose. Just by having them protected and graded like that, they do tend to increase in value. A raw copy, which would be a term used for a loose copy, a non, that is raw in this conversation. Raw, not graded and protected in the plastic box. A raw copy is going to be less valuable because the buyer has less assurance of the quality of it and the condition of it. It is just from the moment of it being on my shelf now, this raw copy, by the time you come and buy it from me, it could have been dropped on the floor. It could have been dinked. Some idiot could hold it badly, like me now, see it's flopping, and lessen its condition by the time we do the transaction. If that was graded and protected, doesn't matter. So wow, big topic. I think it's quite controversial in the comics world, grading. I think people do have strong opinions on it. And I have to say, I don't have a strong opinion. I see the need for it. I see the use of it. And again, I've not quite defined in my own mind what I think is the right time for it to be graded and protected in that way. So let me know your thoughts on this thorniest of thorny topics. Comics grading, good, bad, indifferent? What's your cutoff point? What would make you want to grade a comic? Would you buy a comic? Would you buy this for a tenner versus the graded copy for 50 quid? Where do you stand on it? I'd like to know. Hit me up in the description comments thingies below. Hit like and subscribe, say hello. Please ask any questions, any thoughts, any things you'd like me to talk about in these videos. That'd be great. You can leave a comment below. You can email me, andy@secretidentitycomics.com. Find me on Instagram. Find me on Blue Sky. Hit me up there. All is good. Love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you for the question, OrangeFoxJoker. Again, really do appreciate it. And take it easy. Bye.